Hey adventurers, today we're going to be running down the list of books we read in 2020.
Yeah. I read 26 books this year and maybe 27, we'll see.
And I read 36 books. So yeah, let's get right into it. The first book I have on my list for 2020 that I read, it was The Book Thief by Marcus Zusak. This is historical fiction and I absolutely loved it. It was great.
The first book that I read in 2020 was Harry Potter and the Goblet of Fire, which is book 4. In 2019, I read the first 3 books in the series. So this one, I think I started and finished this one in 2020. I may not have.
The second book on my list is A Wrinkle in Time by Madeline L'Engle, and I loved it. It was a really interesting book. I loved there was a lot of allegorical type of things that were fun to spot, and there is some sequels to this book, and I'm excited to read those in 2021.
The next book that I read, and mine are actually in chronological order, so that's why you'll see a specific order to them, is Harry Potter and the Order of the Phoenix, which is book 5 of Harry Potter.
I did read the latter half of the Harry Potter series in 2020. I don't have them listed in chronological order. The Deathly Hallows is the next one I have listed, which is book 7, as we know. And then I also read The Hero of Ages by Brandon Sanderson. This is the 3rd book in the Mistborn trilogy, and I finally finished the series. It was one I drug out far too long.
The next book I have on my list is book 6 of Harry Potter, and that's Harry Potter and the Half-Blood Prince. I'll talk more about them in a second.
Yeah, so I have The Scarlet Pimpernel, which is written by Baroness Orczy, and I read this one, and I didn't love it, but I really admired some of the writing and some of the story, the way it was told. I really admired it.
And so the last one in the Harry Potter series, is, of course, Harry Potter and the Deathly Hallows, which is book 7. I completed the Harry Potter series, which of course is written by J.K. Rowling. I completed it in 2020, and I really enjoyed the series as a whole. I was super excited to read it because in August of 2019 we had binge watched the movies. Yeah. And really enjoyed them, and so I was super excited to get into the books.
Yeah, so the next book on my list in very unchronological order is Harry Potter and the Goblet of Fire. I did read that one in 2020. And then after that I read The Scorpio Races by
Maggie Stiefvater.
Yeah, thank you. I read The Scorpio Races by Maggie Stiefvater.
Okay, so the next book on my list is Dark Disciple by Christie Golden. This is a Star Wars book. I really enjoyed this book. It follows Asajj Ventress and, Quinlan Vos. If you're a Star Wars fan, you may know who those are. If not, then you probably means absolutely nothing. But it was really cool to see the characters through the lens of a book rather than through an animated television show, which is what I know them best through.
So the next 2 books on my list are Harry Potter and the Half-Blood Prince and Harry Potter and the Order of the Phoenix. Once again, I did read these in order, I promise. I just didn't list them in order.
So the next book that I read is The Giver by Lois Lowry. This is the second, maybe 3rd time that I've read this book. I think it's the 2nd time that I read it. I was intending to read the entire Giver quartet in 2020. Unfortunately, that hasn't happened. But I really enjoyed The Giver. The Giver is one of my favorite books. When I first read it, I considered it dystopian, like a dystopian sci-fi. After reading Messenger, I'm not so sure that is accurate anymore, but I still really enjoyed The Giver.
So the next book on my list is The Story Peddler by Lindsay Franklin, which is hiding in my bookshelf here. This is one of the ones I read in 2020.
So here's a section that I'm not entirely sure is chronological. I think it is, and so I'm going to keep going with it as chronological, but I'm not so sure. The next book on the list, at least, is Way of Kings by Brandon Sanderson. I've been doing Stormlight Archive read-through this year, mostly because book 4 came out, and I wanted to read them all and catch up on them. I'd never read them before, and I'm really, really enjoying it.
The next book I have on my list is Martin the Warrior by Brian Jakes, and I don't have a hard copy of this one on hand, but Tony does. So that's one of the ones I read this year. And then I also read the first book in the Percy Jackson and the Olympian series, which is The Lightning Thief by Rick Riordan.
So the next book I read is A Wrinkle in Time by Madeline L'Engle. I can't speak. Kate already talked about it, so I'm not going to talk anymore about it.
And the next book on my list, and this is where my list kind of turns chronological, is Romanov by Nadine Brandes. This is such a great book. I loved it. I read it. I recommended it to a friend. They tore through it. It's a great book.
So the next book I have on my list is Story Peddler by Lindsay Franklin. Of course, Kate already mentioned it. We really enjoyed the magic system of this book. It was definitely a very unique, very interesting magic system.
So the next book on my list is The Hunger Games by Suzanne Collins. This is book 1 in the trilogy, and I did reread this year. And I also read The Silmarillion by J.R.R. Tolkien, and I promise it was on audiobook, and I did hear most of it. I did sleep through some of it as well. The narrator had a really nice voice and just went right to sleep.
My next book is Martin the Warrior by Brian Jakes. Of course, Kate already talked about it, but I really love this series. Kate isn't so fond of it, but I grew up reading and listening to these books, so I just have a very large amount of love for these books, and Martin the Warrior has been one of my favorites for a long time.
I also read Maze Runner in 2020 by Dashner. I can't think of his first name.
I don't know.
It's like James Dashner, maybe? Anyhow, The Maze Runner, it's the first book in the trilogy, and I enjoyed it, but I'm not entirely sure I'm going to pick up the rest of the trilogy. It's not even a trilogy, it's like a quintilogy. It's not a trilogy, I apologize.
So I also read Desert Gold this year by Zane Grey. This is a Western novel set in New Mexico, I think. It's pretty interesting. It's about, I'm not going to really talk about it. I think we have a reading blog where I talk about it, so it's a ways back. But if you want to know more about it, you can go back and watch that.
The next book I have is Because of Winn-Dixie by Katie DiCamillo, and it was a child's story, and I hadn't read it. It was in my bookshelf, and I wanted something easy, so I picked this up, and it was very sweet. And I also read Percy Jackson and the Sea of Monsters, which I do have, but if I pull every book out of this bookshelf, there's not going to be any left that I read this year, so I'm going to leave it in here for now.
So then I got to Hunger Games by Suzanne Collins. Of course, Kate has already talked about it. We also have a review for it. I'll link it up there in the left-hand corner. And we will let you guys, if you need to know our thoughts on it, you can go watch the review. Sorry, my brain is blinking.
I also read The Old Man and the Sea by Ernest Hemingway this year, along with the third book in the Percy Jackson series, which is The Titan's Curse, which I do have.
So then I read Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde, or The Strange Case of Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde by Robert Louis Stevenson. I did enjoy this book. It probably isn't my favorite, definitely not my favorite of the year, but I did enjoy this book, and it's a classic, and it's one that everybody should read if they like classics, and even if they don't. Plus, it's Robert Louis Stevenson.
I also read Catching Fire in 2020. This is the second book in the Hunger Games trilogy written by Suzanne Collins.
So, technically, I read The Old Man and the Sea before Kate did, and I told her to read it, and so she did. And so I read The Old Man and the Sea by Ernest Hemingway. I really enjoyed this book. It was actually, I was not expecting to love it as much as I did. It was very good. We have a whole discussion about it that I'll link up in the corner there too.
I also read Fail State in 2020, which is written by John Ott. I love this book. It was a superhero, sci-fi-ish, low fantasy. I'm not sure of the exact genre. I really enjoyed it. It was really well written. It's contemporary, of course, and I don't know, it was a lot of fun, and I loved it, and there were some really good themes in it.
The next book on my list is Words of Radiance by Brandon Sanderson, of course. This is Stormlight Archive, and as I already mentioned, I did a Stormlight Archive read-through, other than that I haven't finished Rhythm of War yet. But I really enjoyed Words of Radiance. I really enjoyed getting to see more of the characters that we met in the first book and seeing how they grew and the type of things that they can now do.
The next book on my list is Percy Jackson and the Battle of the Labyrinth. That is book 4 in the Percy Jackson and the Olympian series written by Rick Riordan.
I then read The Hobbit by J.R.R. Tolkien. Of course, I love this book. I have another video that you can watch of it, of me talking and gushing about it, up, and I'll link it up in the corner. I guess we should also say that we'll have all the links to these videos down in the description box down below.
The 24th book I read in 2020 was Jurassic Park by Michael Crichton.
Close enough.
This guy. Hopefully it's not mirrored. It shouldn't be mirrored.
I don't know.
Anyhow, this is the book I read in 2020, and it was my first. I think it was my first solid sci-fi I've ever read, and it was fun. I did enjoy it. It was a different type of story than I was used to.
So I also read Catching Fire. We're gonna run out of tags up in the top left, right hand. I don't know, in the top corner, to give you for all the videos that we have put out. But I did read Catching Fire, and we reviewed Catching Fire. So yeah.
I also read The Ranger's Apprentice, The Ruins of Gorlin, which is book 1 in the Ranger's Apprentice series this year. I guess I could pull that one out for y'all. And yeah, I started this series. This is one that you guys chose for us, and we're excited to keep trying it out.
Yeah. So somewhere in my list, back up the line, I missed Gathering Blue, but I did read Gathering Blue, and the next book on my list in order is Messenger. So I'll briefly talk about both of those. Gathering Blue I really enjoyed. It was very different from The Giver, but it still felt in the same vein as The Giver, and I really enjoyed it. Messenger was a bit different. It was far more dystopian fantasy, and I'm not sure that I liked that. I definitely wasn't expecting that, and so it kind of threw me for a loop, and I'm not sure that I liked it. But once I finish Sun, I will be able to look back at the series as a whole and decide if I liked it or not.
Book 5 in the Percy Jackson and the Olympian series, The Last Olympian, is the other book that I read this year. One of the other books I read this year by Rick Riordan. And that completed the Percy Jackson and the Olympian series. Did I already say that?
No. So then I read Mockingjay by Suzanne Collins. This is the third and final book of the Hunger Games trilogy. After this read through, I decided that I liked this book a lot more than I remembered liking it. There were a couple of big glaring plot holes or plot convenience things to make things happen just so that they could happen, and I didn't like those. We've talked about them. There's a review. I don't know if we have any cards left to link, but it'll be a link in the description.
The other book I read in 2020 is Salt to the Sea by Ruta Sepetys. I'm sorry, I know I butchered that name. This is a historical fiction. It was so good. I loved it from cover to cover. It was amazing.
So then, I think this was September, I started and read Harry Potter and the Philosopher's Stone again. Of course, my copy says the Sorcerer's Stone. Oh well. This is, again, by J.K. Rowling, so I'm still trying to decide if I'm going to continue on rereading this series right now, or if I'm going to just wait for a little while and then do an entire series reread. But I did really enjoy it. I enjoyed it less than the first time I read it, but I think that was just because the novelty of it had worn off, and it wasn't so original and new.
I also read Little Women by Louisa May Alcott this year, and you guys know I love this book. We have a whole video on why I love Little Women, and it was amazing. I got a new edition of it, and I almost started reading it again. So yeah, this is one of the books I read.
So, back to Brandon Sanderson. This time it is not Stormlight, this is Warbreaker. I read this, and the first half of it was a little bit slow. Slow for Sanderson. I didn't quite enjoy it as much as I was thinking, but then the second half came and it blew it out of the water. It was so good. Our friend Fina at A World of Endless Pages did a review of this book. My thoughts basically align with hers, so if you want to see it, I'll link the video and her channel down in the description down below.
I read Mockingjay. I read Mockingjay by Suzanne Collins as well, and completed the Hunger Games trilogy for our reread and our reviews that we did with it. I also read The Burning Bridge, where'd you put that?
I think I read it too, didn't I? Yeah.
By John Flanagan. The Burning Bridge, which is the second book in the Ranger's Apprentice series.
There it is. I read Ruins of Gorlin, which is book 1 of the Ranger's Apprentice series. We have a review for it. Kate already talked about it in this video. We gotta keep going.
I also read The Ballad of Songbirds and Snakes, which is the technical prequel to Suzanne Collins' The Hunger Games series. And I've got some very specific thoughts about this. We are going to have a review one of these days if Tony ever gets to reading this. But if you want to see some of my thoughts, you can check out the vlog that I spoke about it in. And I also read the first book in the Matched trilogy, which is called Matched, and it's by Ali Condi. In a vlog, I talked about this, and I did say her name was Amy Condi, but it's not. It's Ali Condi.
The next book that I read is Dawn of Wonder by Jonathan Renshaw. This is a self-published book, and it's won a ton of awards, and it deserves every single one of them. I don't even know what the awards are, but it deserves it. It was amazing. I absolutely loved it, and I highly recommend it to any fantasy lover. Obviously, that doesn't apply to Kate.
I also read Crossed, which is the second book in the Matched trilogy, and I didn't love it. I liked Matched. Crossed did not hit it off for me. I had some serious problems with the main character and her moral compass, which... Anyhow, we're not going to get into that. There's also a vlog where I talk briefly about that. Because of that, I probably won't be finishing the trilogy. But yeah, that's the third. That's the next book that I wanted to talk about. And I also read Shepherd of the Hills. This was earlier in the year. I'd forgotten to put it on my list, so I threw it on there kind of last minute. This is by Harold Bell Wright. It's an older book, and it's, I don't know, it's just fiction, historical fiction technically, I guess. It was really nice. It's a super old edition that I have, which was so fun to read and find little like leaves pressed in the pages. I don't know. My great aunt gave this to me, so that was kind of fun to be able to read this through.
So the next one is Oathbringer by Brandon Sanderson. I read this book, and it took me a while to get through it because it's a chunker, but I did love it.
A chunker.
It was a hard book to get through, not because it was hard to read or because I wasn't enjoying it, just because I didn't have time to read it. But I did love it. I think I have thoughts and blogs, so yeah.
So the next book on my list is Animal Farm by George Orwell. This was a super interesting book, and if you haven't read it, I would definitely recommend it. It's one of the ones everyone should read in their lifetime. It's a short little read, and I read it on ebook, so I don't have a hard copy, but yeah, it's one of the most recent books I've read. And then the last book I read so far in 2020 is And Then There Were None by Agatha Christie. I loved it. I thought it was great. It was my first Agatha Christie, and I really, really enjoyed some very specific aspects of this, which you'll probably hear about in an upcoming vlog, so.
The last book that I completed in 2020, as of time of filming this, is The Fellowship of the Ring. I know that I've said that The Lord of the Rings is one book, but because they're broken up into 3 different books, just for this specific video, I'm talking about them as 3 separate books.
You hypocrite.
I know, but I did read this. It was so good. I forgot how much I loved this series. I mean, I didn't forget how much I loved it, but I forgot how enjoyable it was just to go through this world and to go through every single thing about this book while I was rereading it, and I just had so much fun rereading it. Well, thank you guys for watching. We hope you enjoyed it. We are so glad that you decided to join us on this journey through 2020. We are very much looking forward to what happens in 2021, and we will see you guys next time. Thanks for watching, guys. If you did enjoy the video, please comment down below with how many books you read this year, and also like the video and subscribe to us if you haven't already. Thanks for watching. Stay warm.